Violator, introduced in Todd McFarlane's Spawn number 2, remains a devious thorn in Spawn's path even after 3 decades. This demonic prankster torments him about Wanda, orchestrates Hell's machinations, and was the reason behind Spawn's temporary death in issue number 100. His wicked deeds and cunning make him a truly vicious enemy, and one of the best comic book villains ever. Now, late last year was the beginning of a magnificent 6-issue miniseries on the Violator. Titled Violator Origin, the comic celebrates the dark side of Spawn's mythos, and gives a wickedly fun ride fans won't want to miss. This miniseries shows that a villain's origins can be as captivating as any hero's journey, and the creative team stays true to Violator's monstrous essence. So if you haven't read the comic just yet, here's your chance to know everything there is to know. But before that, let me quickly explore who exactly the Violator is. You know, just to jog your memory. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Tastes like chicken.
Who is the Violator? The Violator, sometimes called the Clown in his human disguise, and once the angel Bazil, is a key antagonist in Image Comics' Spawn and serves as Spawn's primary archenemy. He belongs to the Phlebiac Brothers, a group of half-demons who serve Malebolgia, Mammon, and even Satan. Despite his grotesque demon form, he prefers to appear as a grimly obese clown. He also headlined his own solo comic, Violator. In issues number 294 and 295, the series reveals that he created the Hellspawn suits and powers, with Al Simmons being the most recent Hellspawn since the line began. He even murdered Al's wife, Wanda, to increase his own power. At one point, he rose to command demons on Earth, replacing his previous master. However, Sin eventually defeated him in issue number 350, and Nyx used his remains as her throne when she became the Queen of Hell. Early on, Violator's clown persona was short, obese, and featured face paint with balding hair. In demon form, he was large and slim. Later, both forms upgraded. The clown side became taller and heavier, often seen wearing a suit with a ponytail, while his demon self gained a more muscular physique covered in spikes. Violator, under any name, is sadistic, psychotic, and holds humans in contempt. He believes true demons should lead hell, so he's manipulative and power-hungry. He's also notably perverted towards women and known for gobbling any trash he finds, except anchovies, which he hates. John Leguizamo's portrayal amplifies these traits, turning him into a rowdy, vulgar showman without manners. He craves attention, constantly makes crude jokes, and even proudly farts and soils himself. He casually calls Satanists retards, showing his complete lack of respect. And now, let's dive into the miniseries. Issue number 1, Angels and Demons. When it comes to breaking the fourth wall, I know for a fact that our guy Deadpool does it the best, especially when it's Ryan Reynolds playing Deadpool. However, Violator comes right after. Comic books don't usually break the fourth wall, but right at the beginning of the Violator Origin miniseries, Violator speaks to the readers. He goes, "Aren't you the handsome devil? Don't just stand there like an imbecile. We know why you are here, so let's dispense the pretenses, shall we?" He goes on to say that he knows why we are here. We came here for a story, maybe 6. He prepares us for a story plagued with betrayals, battles, and survival on the spinning mud ball that is Earth, created by what he calls an absentee creator. He starts the story at the beginning. Not the beginning, more like the end of the beginning. Basically, Violator's tale begins in heaven, before humans were created. He says it was quite the time, one of hope and devotion, and one of creation. And like any great society, they all had one purpose: to help enact the plans of their creator. Each of the angels were paired with someone or the other, and our guy, before he became Violator, was paired with another angel called Gloriana. One day, while giving the final touches to the sun, Gloriana asks him, "The Creator's been working us so hard lately. I don't understand why. What's the urgency, Bazil?" So yeah, Violator's real name was Bazil, as in the name he was given when God created him. But Bazil was a true servant of God, and simply tells her that he doesn't stop to think of the Creator's motive. He says that he doesn't know anything, and just does what the Creator asks him to do. But Gloriana does not believe Bazil. She senses something was off. Later, Creator, Bazil goes to Morningstar, aka Satan, aka Lucifer. He tells Lucifer that Gloriana already suspects something, but Morningstar asks Bazil to calm the duck down because all was working as it should. Bazil raises a concern. What if the Creator found out? Morningstar was not worried, though. You see, he thought the forge of creation and the monument that their Creator was making for himself would keep their plan out of their Creator's thoughts. Bazil once again raises his concern and says that their Creator loves them, that he has given them so much. It was unwise to go against him. But Lucifer says, the Creator is a liar. Just as Bazil warns him against committing blasphemy, Lucifer forces him to see what he would not see willingly. The Creator, as depicted here, was a man taller than any of the angels, sitting on a rock, surrounded by fire and lava, deep in thought. Lucifer snuck closer to the Creator and saw that he was in the process of creating humans, the replacements to angels, or so Lucifer believed at that moment, and called it betrayal. In fact, even Bazil couldn't believe it. How could the Creator use them to create their own replacements? He asked Lucifer, who answers, because the Creator needs followers, needs blind worshippers, and a hierarchy that he will always be at the top of. Next, Lucifer tells Bazil that at an opportune time and place, they would meet with the others and discuss further their plan of action. Bazil leaves Lucifer, but could not stop himself from thinking about what he had just seen. Lucifer had planted the thoughts of doubt in Bazil's mind against his own Creator, but he knew it was nonsense, because nonsense would never really rattle an angel to his very core like this. He was lost, only to be found by Gloriana. Gloriana could see her angel boyfriend a bit distressed, and ends up asking him about his woes. After much hesitation, Bazil asks her, Gloriana, have you ever doubted our Creator? These words fell on her ears like bolts of thunder. She was furious and warns him against ties with Lucifer, the dissenter. She tells him that no good would ever come of friendship with someone like Lucifer. But Bazil was still in doubt, and Gloriana leaves his side. She chooses to part ways with this angel with whom she had been paired for eternity, and it doesn't take her a moment to stop and think about her decision. I guess the couple wanted different things from life. I guess angels and humans are not so different after all, at least according to the comic. Yet Bazil continued to do God's work, taking the nothingness of space and making it a part of something filled with life and beauty. But he had lost faith in his purpose. Anyway, most of the angels were happy being a part of something so grand and beautiful. Gloriana meets Bazil again. She hoped that he would have let the poisoned words of Lucifer out of his mind, but he went a step further this time and ended up asking Gloriana, who created the Creator? Of course, she did not have an answer to the question and believed it was best to part ways once again with Bazil instead of letting Lucifer's madness pass from Bazil into her. Later, Bazil goes to a secret fallen angel-only group meeting. I mean, they haven't fallen yet, but they're all against their Creator, so we know their fate. You have read the grand old book, haven't you? Anyway, Bazil was still in two minds as Samael guided him in. Lucifer was also present. After one fleeting thought of going back to God, Bazil took the final step into Lucifer's fold, a place of no return, if you will. Lucifer had gathered a bunch of rotten apples of angels at his hideout. They knew the risk that they were taking and were only interested in knowing the plan that Lucifer had for them. So, after stalling them for a bit, he let Bazil take the stage. Now, he explains, as we all know, the act of creation creates byproducts, waste, detritus. But this discarded creation energy is deceptive. It looks blackened and dead, but inside, it teems with power. In fact, he even demonstrates how the life spark of each angel can basically be merged with this energy. The energy takes over the angels one by one, turning them all into horrid versions of angels, turning them into demons, the followers of Lucifer. The power that these angels felt in that moment was tremendous and intoxicating. They all hailed Lucifer for what he had just provided them with. Bazil left from this meeting and continued to do God's work. Of course, he was torn between his devotion to God and the doubts he had against him, which is when Gloriana comes to him. But the energy that Bazil had absorbed, it kinda had a mind of its own and attacked Gloriana. Initially, Bazil could not control it, but he did manage after a bit of a struggle. Needless to say, he hurt Gloriana pretty badly before letting go. After freeing Gloriana from his clutches, he left the place in shame, in repentance, in disgust. But you know what? This was all a gimmick. Gloriana had collaborated with one of the good guys to extract some of that dark energy from Bazil so that it could be studied, so that Lucifer's hideout could be found. Meanwhile, more angels joined Lucifer's ranks, and his army was becoming more formidable by the minute. And it wasn't before long that he led them to a war between angels and fallen angels. And just like that, everything changed forever. Looking at all this, Bazil thought to himself that although creation was a messy process, destruction was chaos unchained. All the anger, the rage, the bloodlust on both sides, Bazil wondered if he was the one who had caused all of this. Was he the one who brought death into paradise? He finds Gloriana with a sword of light and flame confronting him, but he does not fight, not yet, and she strikes him, although she doesn't tell him that she takes no pleasure in hurting him. He falls into a pit of nothingness, and the detritus energy engulfs him. He was but a spark who ignited an inferno, who is now alone and used by both sides, but wanted by neither. He had been left abandoned to his fate, as his sins enveloped him, giving him a pain that was most exquisite. Yet Bazil believed that he deserved it all. As the dark energy melted away his previous existence and boiled his blood, he embraced the agony in all its sorrowful glory. Soon he fell to earth. The impact created a mushroom cloud, as if there had been a nuclear explosion. Bazil found himself in a crater, created by the impact of his accelerating self against the earth. He was not dead. He had been denied the peace of death. He was left burned and twisted. Now he was looking like his real self, the Violator. A three-horned demon with blood-red eyes, skeletal physique, hundreds of sharp teeth, Bazil was dead, but he was reborn. Loyal to none but himself, he was the Violator. But the Violator does not look like the obese short man we know. Well, how we got this avatar is explained in the next issue. Issue 2, the Violator needs something to wear. So, just as you thought you knew what was happening, you get slapped in the damned face by a giant-ass Viking hellspawn's axe. Yep. So, this one begins near the Isle of Lindisfarne, aka the Holy Island, right off the northeastern coast of England, and the year is 793 AD. We meet the Violator in a prison of ice, submerged at the surface. But what's this? He's being pulled by a few hooks and chains. Around 6 men of God were pulling the creature, but they all seemed to be in a bit of a rush. They were clearly afraid of something sinister, but all their haste could not really save them. One of them hearkens, "Brothers, it is too late. We have no time." The other says, "They are here. The emissary of evil is upon us. Our doom has arrived." What do we see? Giant Viking ships on the horizon, inching closer with each passing second. Bats with green eyes and in huge numbers attacked these priests before the Hellspawn made his presence known. One of the priests exclaimed, "Actual hell could not be worse than this infernal ship." The Hellspawn, upon hearing this, eased the priest's worries and sent him to the actual hell by crushing his skull. The art is simply amazing in this one particular panel. Each stroke is so perfect, each drop of water and piece of snow so well placed. While the Hellspawn was busy, the other priests took their package to the other side of an iron gate. Of course, the Hellspawn followed them inside, killing a few on the way in. The surviving priests were foolish to believe that this mortal metal gate would be able to stop a Hellspawn, yet they acted according to their faith, and the rest of the details to their creator, who may have forsaken them. The Hellspawn warns the priests, "Give me what I am here for, and I will kill you quickly. Don't, and I shall take my time peeling the flesh from your bones." Of course, he said it better than I did, and when he said it, the priests shuddered in fear. He slashes the iron gate with his giant sword, burning in green flame. But what about the package that the priest spent so much time and effort securing? Well, the block of ice was now melting. The first thing to become visible was the Violator's blood-red eyes. The priests kept moving deep into the tunnel system with the Violator's frozen body. In fact, 2 of them even chose to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. But it proved rather pointless because they failed to distract the Hellspawn and ended up giving their lives to the Hellfire. Hellspawn searched and searched for their comrades, who had managed to buy themselves some time. Time for what, though? Well, the block of ice had melted enough for the Violator to emerge out of it. He was not sure where he was and how he reached there. But then he remembered. After being cast out of both heaven and hell, he found a home on earth, a place where every single thing and every single creature seemed to laugh upon him, upon his predicament. He had no idea how long he had been on this plane or how long he had been trapped in that ice, but he knew his rage fairly well. His rage, his revenge, his struggle for justice, or at least he believed that he still deserved justice. Anyway, the next few panels also explain how the Violator got trapped in the ice. To sum it up, he was kind of exploring but fell through thin ice. So that's it. After coming back to life, or whatever you want to call it, he asks the priests, "Are you men of God? You pulled me from the sea? Why?" The priests tell him that they saved him only because they needed him to fight an immediate threat. And before our guy could figure out what the humans meant, the immediate threat presented itself in all its vile glory. Oh, by the way, the Violator had once created the armor and weapons that the Hellspawn was wearing, so he could sense something familiar. Anyway, the fallen angel addresses the Hellspawn as Lucifer's pet. Lucifer had always sent his minions to fight his battles and do his dirty work. This time around, it was the Hellspawn. The Violator offered a fight to the Hellspawn, but the latter simply says that he was not there to fight. On the contrary, he wanted the Violator to rejoin Lucifer's army in the battle against the Creator. "I come as a compatriot, a brother in arms," says the Hellspawn. One of the priests warns the Violator against paying heed to the Hellspawn's words, since they were coming from the Prince of Lies, from Lucifer. But it wasn't quite required, because the Violator knew Lucifer more than anyone else here. The Violator does and says all he could to sway the Hellspawn into abandoning Lucifer, but his devotion to Satan was primordial and eternal. He would fight anyone who went against him, or die trying. Hellspawn grew bored of all this talk and attacked the Violator with all his might. The two of them engaged. Demon versus the servant of the devil. The fight between the worst enemies of all things nice and good. There was a small instant when it seemed that the Hellspawn would win the battle, but since everything that protected and armed the Hellspawn had been created by the Violator, the Hellspawn's chains deceived him and obeyed his enemy. Of course, the Violator annihilated his so-called brother in arms, and even ate his severed head. Well, all that fighting and talking made him hungry. I don't blame him. Next, he turned his attention to the human priests and allowed them to walk away freely because they had freed him. He did remember to mention that this was a one-time offer. While the majority of the surviving priests took the offer, there was one who did not wish to make a deal with the devil and believed that it was better to die than to live at the mercy of someone like the Violator. He attacked, but the demon killed him in no time. The Violator stuck his hand inside the plump little priest and pulled out his innards, bones, blood, and all. This is when he realized that if he had to walk among men, he should look like one. He says, "I'm going to need something to wear." Of course, he wore the skin of this dead priest. Oh, and as for the ships that the Hell Viking had brought, they belonged to him now. Needless to say, he could not wait to see what the humans had done to the place as he sailed away in his newfound suit and ship. That's where the second issue ends. But now we're getting to the good parts. Gloriana is about to meet her soul buddy, so settle in and enjoy. Issue 3. Humans are for drama, flavor, and protein. This one jumps more than 5.5 centuries and opens in Paris 1349 AD. The city had been filled with the smell of rotting flesh, which was occasionally broken by the smell of shit and piss. Death was everywhere, but also present were grief and despair. The perfect setting for someone like the Violator. He could see humans dying their slow deaths and wondered why the Creator chose these fragile chattel over his kind. But then a thought came to him. Sycophants are much easier to control than those who question. Just ask the world leaders, they would tell you. It is a bit strange that I'm comparing God with these twisted politicians who only hunger for money and power, but if you think about it, it's not so strange after all. Enough with that, and on with the story. As the Violator walks in a rather elegant costume, a little girl approaches him and asks for alms. But in the name of kindness, all that the Violator offers her is a quicker death at the end of his cane. But before he could execute that, he notices something strange. Hellspawn, 5 of them. You may think that the odds were against him, but he liked his odds. In the meantime, the girl he had just tried to beat with his cane, she jumped right at him and destroyed his bodysuit. Of course, he threw her away and into the water, but with his suit destroyed, he needed a new one. Moreover, he had come to his real form, so this small incident seemed necessary. Anyway, as he prepared to fight the Hellspawns, his attention got deflected somewhere else. Before him and the Hellspawns were the Seraphim, led by Gloriana herself, his long-lost soul share, or soul buddy. Gloriana orders her friends to destroy the abominations, and the Violator took a bit of relief that they were not after him. More than relieved, I believe he was intrigued. The Hellspawn charged as well, launching their chains on the angels, ready for an attack. The battle was a fierce one. Green and yellow filled the surrounding, but the Violator was feeling a bit left out. He needed to participate in it. After all, how could he let the others have all the fun? Needless to say, he jumped right into the midst of the battle. One of the angels dropped a sword, and Violator tried to wield it, but that could not come to pass because his demonic hand burned and he cried in agony. You see, to the Creator, he was now more unworthy than when he was cast aside. It was now that Gloriana finally noticed this strange man, but he revealed that he was no man. Gloriana immediately recognizes that this guy was her, ex. But Gloriana was still under attack from the Hellspawn, and as Bazil tried to help her, he wondered why he was trying to save her. She wouldn't waste a second to destroy him, but the situation was running out of hand. He needed to collect his thoughts somewhere else, some other time. This was not the time or the place for that. The best thing to do now was to clean up the mess. Violator destroyed a couple of Hellspawns and saved Gloriana in the process. He was still surprised, rather shocked, that he was facing a moral quandary. This was very unlike him. He escaped the place and jumped into the water to disappear, at least for the time being. Additionally, he knew he could not waltz those streets looking like that. In his true form, that is. Of course, he needed another suit. But you know what? Violator hated suit shopping. Arriving at a sewage tunnel system to hide for a while, the Violator began thinking about the past hour. Since the war in heaven, he had forgotten about Gloriana. However, just a small glance at her brought back all the memories, all the suppressed emotions of a lover boy. But he also remembered that she chose the Creator, that she cast him aside like an afterthought. Not wasting any more time on these futile thoughts, he went looking for a tailor, if you know what I mean. He spotted a drunkard and took his skin for himself. And now he could invest himself in more important questions. For instance, what were both Hellspawn and Cherubim doing in Paris? They were as surprised to see him as he was of them. So if they weren't coming after him, what were they after? He had to find his answers, so he lures one of the Hellspawn into an abandoned building, where he extracts information from the Hellspawn. So it turns out that the Creator had sent the angels to Paris on some sort of a secret mission, and the Hellspawn were sent by their masters to find out this secret plan before foiling it. The information was incredibly vague, yet intriguing. I mean, Gloriana was leading an Earthside secret mission, so he needed to find more information. But first, he needed another skin suit, since the Hellspawn had destroyed the last one. This time, Violator goes for a dying woman and just falls in love with her skin. So many moving parts, he says. I believe this is the moment from when he started having those lewd thoughts and a despicable obsession with women. On his way to find the angels, the Violator comes across 3 homeless men. One of them makes a move on him, and Violator kills this man. Once again, he had made a public display of violence and needed to ditch the woman's suit, but not before reminding himself to try more women. Anyway, it didn't take him much more time to find the angels. How? Well, they were working out of a cathedral. It really doesn't get more predictable than this, does it? Meanwhile, Gloriana was drowning in her own thoughts and questioning the Creator's reasons and methods. She believed that the Creator had sent her to Paris because he knew that she would find the Violator here. This was just the Creator's method of finding out where Gloriana's true fealty lay, or so she thought. But she was definitely tired of having to prove herself every now and then. She asks Ramiel if this would go on for eternity. He tells her a few kind words and how the Lord sent her to Paris only because he knew she could pull off the task. As the 3 angels discussed further, Gloriana sensed something unholy, something that did not belong. It was the stench of Hellspawn, but also present at the cathedral was Violator. Everyone engaged everyone else, and once again, Violator ended up saving Gloriana's life. When it was all done and dusted, Gloriana asked him about the reason why he saved her. He tells her that it was not from the goodness of his heart, but because he needed her in his debt, and since he had spared her life, she should not come looking for him. Against all odds, Gloriana agreed. A true servant of God would not have made a deal with a demon, a fallen angel, but Gloriana did. It seems that the last piece of her heart and her faith was gone. On the other hand, the Violator cursed God for reminding him what he had lost, Gloriana. With that, we come to the end of the third issue. But hey, the fourth issue takes us into the midst of the great wars of the 20th century and his stint with Rasputin. So let's dive right in. Issue 4. Favorite son. In this fourth story that the Violator tells us, he says that just thinking about the incident in Russia gives him the chills. Not because the events were scary, no, but because Russia was freezing. In fact, he concedes that it was far from his finest hour. Then again, I'm sure that the life of an outcast demon was never all glitz and glamour. So this time around, the Violator was wearing the hide of an old man and came across a church to get his fill of wine. But what he sees shocks him, and that's saying something. Inside was Rasputin, naked with 5 naked girls. At least 3 of the 7 deadly sins were being committed right here. As the Violator watched on, a mob entered the church and caught Rasputin red-handed. The locals claimed that he had bewitched their women, but he told them that no one needed to bewitch anyone. As the mob engaged with Rasputin, who called himself immortal, one of the mobsters attacked our guy and wished that he had not done that. The man had destroyed Violator's skin suit, and he was pissed, so the Violator killed his attacker. Well, that only makes sense for someone like a demon. Anyway, the church burned down on the Violator, and when he came out, he found that Rasputin had been hanged to his death. Of course, he went for Rasputin's skin. The fit impressed Violator, for Rasputin was all things evil. Almost someone who would make a Class A demon had he not been human. And so, Rasputin came back from his death. Months later, the story takes us to this rich Russian guy's house. His wife was going through some sort of a mental illness and called the man Rasputin to cure her. You see, the servants outside could hear her scream as if she was being murdered, but in reality, she was screaming the hell out of herself only because Rasputin, aka the Violator, was violating the hell out of her. Kinda like C&C, if you know what that is. Anyway, once he left the room, it seemed that the woman had been cured of whatever ailment she was suffering from. I believe it was an acute case of unfulfilled desire, which Rasputin's scratched back proved to good measure. When asked if she needed something, she asked if they could get him back, but he was gone, to help others in need. Oh, and by the way, he was telling people that he was a godly man. So yeah, he moved on in search of more wine and more women. But like everyone else, Rasputin's past caught up with him. He was now facing a small army of armed men, ready to take him down. They asked him to surrender in exchange for guaranteed safety, but he was in no mood to make any such offers to these men. Of course, he went for blood, and one by one, the men started to fall. Well, they never had a chance to begin with. Now, time for a twist. You see, these guys had not come to kill Rasputin. In reality, they had come with their leader, Tsar, because he needed Rasputin to help his ailing son, who was suffering from hemophilia. Tsar sought Rasputin's help, and Grigory Rasputin did not refuse. Because of his service, the Tsar let Rasputin into his home. In reality, the Violator had treated the child by giving him his demon blood, and the child had become addicted to it. Rasputin was now enjoying the carnal desires the best he could, but the most important of his achievements was becoming the Tsar's most trusted advisor. Anyway, Rasputin could not carry on his shenanigans for long because the men of God at the Tsar's service had started to see through Rasputin's work. They could see that he had corrupted the Tsar's son with all things evil, so they planned to strike back. On the other hand, even the Violator had started to feel that he had been living a fairly complacent life for far too long and should not give in to the pleasures of the flesh. One day, the priests and the Tsar invite Rasputin for tea, but the tea had been laced with holy stuff, and it hurt the Violator. The priests, they did something beyond anyone could imagine when they slit the boy's throat to hurt the Violator. However, the kid's blood was used by Satan himself, and he appeared before the Violator. In a strange turn of events, the Violator managed to send Satan back to hell, and himself, he jumped into the water since he knew Russia and Tsar were not his friends any longer. The next issue of this miniseries takes place in Berlin, 1938, and the last one isn't out yet. I mean, not when this video's script was being written. I'll wait for the last issue to come up and maybe explore the 5th one along with the last one. Marvelous verdict. It's totally worth your time. Violator Origin delivers a fresh backstory for one of Spawn's most notorious villains. Mark Andreyko's scripts cut deep into Violator's psyche, showing a demon who once had a different identity. Artist Peter Kowalski's work in the first issue, paired with Brad Simpson's colors, creates a cinematic vibe. Each page looks bold, capturing Violator's shift from an otherworldly being to a menacing clown. In issue number 2, Kyle Hotz's art intensifies the demon's twisted persona, and Draco balances horror and devilish humor, so these comics never feel repetitive. Violator's bold personality and flamboyant commentary captivate readers. His cunning remains consistent, yet we see glimpses of who he was. Adding depth, the creative synergy shows in how script and visuals depict a brutal yet entertaining corner of the Spawn universe. Violator's origin story tackles big questions about identity and fate, but it never loses its darkly entertaining spark. The pacing moves briskly, giving readers enough revelations to stay invested without bogging down. Each twist underscores the character's ruthlessness, reminding us why Violator endures as one of Spawn's greatest antagonists. It cements his wicked legend. Fans seeking a deep dive into Violator's past will appreciate these issues. They stand alone, offering enough context for newcomers while rewarding longtime readers with new insights. The narrative leans into dark humor, but respects serious themes of power and consequences. Everything from the visceral art to the snappy dialogue cements Violator Origin as essential reading. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.